The storm that night was relentless, a furious symphony of wind and rain that rattled the windows of our home. I sat in the living room, staring at the clock. The hands crept toward midnight. Emily had promised to be back hours ago. She'd gone to the market, something routine, something safe. But now the storm had swallowed her, and I hadn't heard a word. I tried to convince myself everything was fine. Maybe her phone had died. Maybe she'd taken shelter somewhere. But with every unanswered call, my chest tightened, my thoughts turning darker. Emily wouldn't just vanish. By the time the clock struck 1 a.m., the house was eerily silent. It felt too quiet, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. At 3 a.m., a sound jolted me awake. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, clutching my phone. The noise was faint, just the clink of glass coming from the kitchen. Relief surged through me. She's back. I scrambled to my feet. "Emily!" I called out, my voice breaking in the stillness. No answer. I moved toward the kitchen, the soft glow of the hallway light casting long shadows. When I reached the doorway, I stopped cold. The room was empty. The only thing out of place was a glass on the counter. I didn't remember leaving it there. The air felt heavy, charged. Then I smelled it. Roses, Emily's perfume. My relief quickly turned to unease. She wasn't here. So why could I smell her? That's when I noticed the basement door. It was just a crack. I hesitated, staring at the door as it swayed slightly, as though beckoning me. The basement was a place neither of us liked, a damp, musty storage area filled with the previous owner's junk. We barely ever went down there. I told myself the wind must have blown it open. That's all. But deep down, I didn't believe it. Grabbing a flashlight from the counter, I made my way down the creaking stairs. Each step groaned under my weight, and the air grew colder with every descent. The beam of light flickered, struggling to pierce the oppressive darkness. At the bottom, I froze. Her purse. It was lying on the floor, half buried under a thin layer of dust. My stomach churned as I crouched to pick it up. Inside were her phone, her wallet, her keys, all of it untouched. But why would she leave them here? I stood clutching the purse when I heard it. A whisper, soft and fragmented, brushing past my ear. "Daniel!" My heart slammed against my ribs. The sound wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. It was her voice. I whipped around, the flashlight beam darting wildly across the room. "Emily!" I called out, my voice trembling. "Where are you?" The whisper came again, closer this time. "Help me!" It sounded like she was in pain, her voice fractured, distant. My flashlight caught something in the corner of the room, a mirror. Its surface was cracked and covered in grime. But when I stepped closer, I saw her. She was behind me. Her face was pale, almost translucent, her hair matted and damp. But her eyes, they were dark hollows, empty and lifeless. She raised a hand and pointed to the wall behind me. I spun around, the flashlight beam trembling. There was nothing but bricks and shadows. When I turned back to the mirror, she was gone. The wall she had pointed at looked ordinary, but I couldn't ignore the icy dread curling around me. I ran my hand along the surface, and my fingers caught on something, a loose panel. With a deep breath, I pried it loose. Behind it was a hidden compartment. Inside, I found a photograph. My hands shook as I pulled it out. It was Emily smiling, but she wasn't alone. Standing next to her was a man I didn't recognize, his arm draped over her shoulders. He had a cruel smile, one that made my stomach churn. On the back, scrawled in jagged handwriting, were the words, "Till death do us part." I stared at the picture, the air around me growing colder. Then I felt it, a hand on my shoulder. My blood ran cold as I turned. She was there again. Her mouth moved soundlessly, her expression pleading, desperate. Then she began to dissolve, her body crumbling into ash that scattered into the darkness. I fled upstairs shaking, barely able to think. The house felt alive, watching, waiting. I called the police, telling them everything. I didn't care if they thought I was crazy. When they arrived the next morning, they searched the basement. That's when they found it. Beneath the floorboards was a shallow grave. Inside were human remains. The coroner confirmed they matched Emily's description, but the body had been there for years. I stared at the officers as they told me, my mind reeling. How could that be? I'd just seen her, spoken to her. The scent of roses still lingered in the house. I moved out shortly after, but I couldn't leave it behind. The whispers followed me. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I'd wake to the sound of her voice calling my name. Other times I'd catch glimpses of her in mirrors, her hollow eyes watching me. But the worst part is the roses. No matter where I go, the scent always finds me, clinging to the air, reminding me she's still here. And every night I wonder, is she trying to protect me, or is she waiting for me to join her?